And then it says, and they were all amazed at the greatness of God. And they were all amazed. Who was all amazed? The crowd around, but also the disciples amazed. We know who he is, but they are amazed at the greatness. May we be amazed. Come on. At the greatness. May we understand and see. I'm hoping you're going to get this. The greatness of our God. Now, in Matthew's account, if you go back to Matthew, the disciples right after all this, Matthew 17, the disciples ask, how come we couldn't cast out the devil? Like, it's a fair question. And Jesus answers them in verse 20, chapter 17. And he says to them, because of the littleness of your faith. Ouch. But then, even more ouch, Jesus says, truly, I say to you, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed. Anybody ever seen a mustard seed? Like, you can't get smaller than a mustard seed. If I was to hold up a mustard seed, you would, right now, none of you would be able to see it. It's so small. So Jesus just says, look at this. Jesus just says, why couldn't you cast it out? Because of the smallness of your faith. If you just had faith this small. So in other words, your faith wasn't even this small. If you just had faith this small, you would cast out devils. You would move mountains. Now watch, come on. And nothing would be impossible for you. Then he says, but this kind does not come out except for prayer and fasting. So here I want you to see something. I want you to understand something. Very, very key. Because you are and I, in our human nature, we are all fascinated by power. And we're all fascinated by, when we read the story, we are focused on, and I've heard it preached so many times, I've preached it so many times in this way, that we're focused on the size of their faith. Jesus says you couldn't do this because of the littleness of your faith, but if you had the faith the size of mustard seed, and they're thinking, you mean our faith was littler than that? And Jesus is, eventually by using this analogy, saying, it's not the size that matters. It's not the power at all. It has nothing to do with the power of your faith. It doesn't have to do with things. And he says this, he says, it's just except for prayer and fasting. Okay? But they're like, we did pray. Oh, we forgot to fast. We should probably, if we fasted and we focus on this, don't we? We focus on these things. But listen, and you take all of this, and you can take all of this out of context, and if you take it out of context, you can miss exactly what Jesus is saying. Because what happens right after this encounter, after they ask this question, right after this, in Caesarea Philippi, in the exact same thing, what does Jesus do next? What Jesus does next is he sends them out 2 by 2 in this region. And he doesn't just send out the 3 that went up the mountain with him, that saw that with faith. He doesn't just send out the 12 that have his close disciples. He sends them out, 72 of them, 2 by 2, in the very region, right after the same group couldn't cast out a devil of a small boy. He sends them into the same region. And we don't see a lag in time. We don't see, what I want you to see here is we don't see them having time to get prayed up, powered up, and we don't see them fasting. In fact, when he sends them out 2 by 2, what's one of the instructions he gives them? Eat whatever is set before you. Right? And they come back. In chapter 10 of Luke, they come back, and this is their report, verse 17. They come back, and their report is simply, they return with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. In other words, we did it. Like, We couldn't cast out the devils, that little boy, but we did it. We did it. It worked. Again, this is Caesarea Philippi. Again, this is a demonic stronghold. Again, Jesus cast out the devil of a little boy. He says, you couldn't do this because of prayer and fasting. We don't see any of that going on. And he sends them out. And he says to them, watch, because he gives us something so powerful that you and I need to see and understand. In verse 18, Luke chapter 10, and he said to them, I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. What? Well, Jesus was praying for them. They were going out 2 by 2. He says, I saw Satan fall like lightning. In other words, he says, I saw something in the region change. Transformation in the most demonic portion of Israel. He says, I saw transformation. I saw something change. And by the way, there ain't no 7 pagan temples there anymore. And by the way, the gates of Hades doesn't exist anymore in that location. Okay, by the way, you name your dog or cat Caesar, and your children Peter and John. What does that have to do with anything? The temple of Caesar was rendered to nothing. I saw Satan fall, Jesus says. How? Verse 19, behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will injure you. There's so much in this verse. I need you to understand so much. So much. I've given you what? Authority. Over what? The power. Did you recognize, you see this? You see that Jesus acknowledges that the devil has power? You see that? He's not denying. He's not flexing his muscles and saying, yeah, I got more. It's not about the size of the power. Okay, let me just put it this way. Use an analogy. I own a 75 Ford pickup that has a 460 engine in it. I'm going to date myself right here, but it's got power. And the sound of that engine, come on. Us guys, all the girls are like, so, but all the guys are like, you were falling asleep, but all of a sudden you're paying attention, like, ugh. We're enamored with power, aren't we? Like power, like something has power. But did you know it doesn't matter the power of the engine until it's harnessed by the authority of the steering wheel? That the engine can have all the power in the world and make all the noise in the world and be all impressive, all the rest of it. But it just takes the authority of the steering wheel to decide where that power is harnessed and where it goes. And what did Jesus say? I have given you the steering wheel over all the power of the enemy. It doesn't matter. That's why he says it's not the size of your faith. It's not you getting yourself all powered up. It's you recognize I have the authority to steer. Oh, come on. You're not getting this yet. Because, hey, you can think all you want that you work in the most demonic place and there's so much power and there's so much this and there's all this and there's no one's going to get saved and all the blah, 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 all this kind of stuff and going, and I need to pray harder and I need to have more faith. And we think that I need to do more. And I need you to realize, come on. You don't have to power up. You need to recognize your authority. This is what Jesus is saying. This is why I believe Jesus announced who he was and his plan for the ecclesia, which the ecclesia wasn't a temple with power or a synagogue, or a church where we have 200 or 300 gathered together there. And the power isn't in a meeting or after a certain atmosphere or with somebody super anointed wearing a white suit that we can see healings. The power is where 2 or 3 are gathered and you are been given what? The keys and the authority even over the power of the enemy.